On July 19th, 2001, Square Enix released Final Fantasy X, a revolutionary game in every capacity, shaking up yet again how RPGs were produced and what was expected of them. They had done this before 9 different times, or at least 3 if you ask the fans. Then they made Star Wars and a MOBA featuring Bahama foot fetish boss. 8 years later, in 2009, Final Fantasy 13 was released as the first HD RPG for next-gen consoles. It was beautiful, and everybody hated it. But was it all that bad? And what's happened since? Why am I asking you all of these questions?
Is it normal to come purple? Because I'm pretty sure I have like 5 days to live.
Hi. I like Final Fantasy 13. Yes, I am on medication. 13 years ago, it made its debut, and honestly, I think that game has done a lot for the industry. Now, my goal here isn't to try to get you to play Final Fantasy 13, because if, you know, say, showing Final Fantasy porn to a bunch of horny Italian senators didn't get them into Final Fantasy, I don't know what will. That's a spicy meatball! My goal is simply to get you to see the good parts of this wildly bastardized atrocity. That is Final Fantasy 13. Strange. Notice something? Oh yeah, I think I do. This kicks ass! This game takes all the cool shit from prior games and builds off them. I mean, summons that are transformers, that are vehicles, a gun blade that switchblades into a gun or a blade, 2 guns that can turn into big double gun? Oh my god! The graphics, choreography, animation, 13 years later are stellar and meets today's standards. Imagine being in middle school and getting this for Christmas.
I can't wait to cause the divorce.
That was my experience. I loved it. But what did other people who aren't insane think? You ponder to yourself. Well, asshole, let's take a look. So, how was it initially received? The reviews read, Final Fantasy 13 received generally positive reviews. Review aggregator website Metacritic gave the PlayStation 3 and concluded that Final Fantasy 13 deserved a score of 120, as 100 would not be enough. The game was voted as second best game of 2009 in the Engeki's online reader poll. In January 2010, it was voted as the best game ever. It's the mid. Okay, so all reviews are fucking garbage. Here's the download. The story is presented poorly and confusingly, refusing to explain basic concepts to the player in hopes of delivering realistic dialogue.
I mean, you are Sanctum, aren't you?
I'm after the Foul Sea.
The Sanctum's Foul Sea pushed her back. What'd you, sleep through history?
Everything is linear, from the fancy hallways to the leveling system that prevents grinding and makes you pay 5 times as much for leveling up something that you're not supposed to.
Which is why Rudy's is stuck as a healer.
Lastly, there are no NPCs or towns. The only area that breaks up the monotony destroys the frame rate. The end result is a bunch of boring hallways and fights you can't run away from. Yeah, I get it. It's been said a quadrillion times already. No one cares. Even in Japan, where it's stated that it's sold fastest of any Final Fantasy to date at the time, within 5 to 6 months, the price lowered from 7,000 yen, or roughly $70, to 500 yen, or $5. Final Fantasy games never drop below 980 yen. So yeah, relatively the same experience as over here, and thus the information is fucking skewed. But these shitty IGN reviews do touch upon 3 things that are undeniable: gameplay, music, graphics, and seamless transitions. Combat, if you want to call it that, is just watching the characters fight, filling a bar, and switching formations. It is boring. You could argue that this is more of a fighting spectacle, as previous games were also fought via menu, which, Jesus Christ, you don't even have to play! But that's not what actually makes it special. What it is that if you raise the trigger gauge, there's something staggering. This is the most important status in the game. There may not be any skill to it, and you may be able to press a button that makes all the decisions for you! But a monster that cannot be beaten would take 40 fucking minutes to fight, exploiting its weakness until it's a little boss baby for a limited time. It feels good. Even when doing it again and again like a Boss Baby 2 family business, it's kind of a familiar concept to Boss Baby back in. When playing The Legend of Zelda, getting the opponent vulnerable and then attacking them with your sword, usually a total of 3 times, motivates you to continue. Even though this is repeated constantly, oddly enough, you like it. Not because you're defeating some amazing challenge, but because you feel like you are. And that's all that matters. It's easy to spin against Bowser and then jump on him, but it feels good. This is pre-loot boxes, but it's the same exact concept. Just less gambling and more explosions. You want to hear an underrated soundtrack? You want to hear a few of them? I've been using this music in the background this whole time, and I will continue to until I'm done. Made by composer Masashi Hamauzu, 13's composer had worked directly under original Final Fantasy composer Nobuo Uematsu for years, and co-created the FF10 soundtrack. Clearly. Hamauzu was mentored and specifically picked as his replacement for this game. God, I wish I got a super famous mentor to jumpstart my career. Same thing happened with Troy Baker, the voice of Snow, with Chris Sabat, voice of all of Dragon Ball Z. Sound mentors, huh? Who needs training to learn how to make sounds? Refusing to explain... Here's the down low. The story is fuck me. And this disconnect might be the original... Fucking goddamn it! There is no negative to this. Final Fantasy passed its music onto the next generation, and it's beautiful. Pop quiz. On the staff of FF13, 200 people, how many were artists? Programmers are needed, so they probably take up the most amount of people, right? My friend guessed 10%. He was correct. 10% of the staff were not artists. 180 artists work on this game and it fucking shows! Stellar shit. Incredible. You might notice that this was made in Japan. English, they changed it! They changed it up! There was no motion capture back then! Ah! In fact, so much was changed in this game's 4-year development hell that they had enough unused visuals to make a complete other game with just those assets. And they did. This game was incredible. Everyone was amazing. The team was amazing. But it comes at a cost. See, remember before when we mentioned the whole frame rate drop? And how it's the only area with NPCs? Motomu Toriyama, the director, said in an interview that the team was unable to make towns as graphically appealing as the rest of the game and chose to eliminate them. The problem with the game stems from the graphics. The directors made a conscious decision to make the presentation so incredible, and so they wrote a story solely based on fate, linearity, and made the main characters fugitives on the run. Because if they didn't, the game would not be functional. Now, wasn't that great? So many good things we talked about, with an eerie theme that was just introduced to create dread. Like, that's weird. Wow, this is easier than I thought. In 2004, shortly after Final Fantasy X-2 was finished, scenario conceptor Kazushige Nojima made the backstory and built the world, while director Toriyama focused on making a story inside of this mythology. Toriyama wanted to portray characters at the mercy of a predetermined unjust fate, who belong together but collide heavily. In 2006, Daisuke Wanatabe was hired as a writer to help Toriyama flesh out his chapters while he went to direct, and was handed an outline. This disconnect between original writer and vision might be an explanation for why the game goes hard in some scenes, while others there seems to be some miscommunication, especially considering the difference between Japanese and English voice acting. Georgia Van Coilenberg was forced to mimic a flamboyant Japanese female for her performance, in English, with an Australian accent, with semi-fake amnesia. Make that sound natural, why don't you? Go ahead. Hey, this is voice acting. That's audio. You put it in the wrong section. Have you heard a translation? 13's translators have. Usually, translators have to turn around entire game's dialogue within 2 weeks. This time around, they did just that. 5 different times, if not more! They might have gotten it on the first try, but when you have 5 separate recording sessions of different versions of dialogue because the official writing for Japan keeps getting changed incredibly late in development, things get fucked. That's why, despite the game's reputation, Lightning is beloved in Japan for being a stoic with witty commentary, a mix between Balthier and Orange. Which is a great transition to the good part of the story, the characters. A linear plot in a story with an untouched, show-don't-tell backstory. All they have to work with is character dynamics. And my god, do they make it work for it! The game features main characters Lightning, Snow, Hope, Saz, Vanille, and Fang. None of those are names! You like Cloud, Stoic Lightning. Like Tidus, Snow. Like Tidis, Vanille. The only character with a completely nude model in the game. I am not kidding. Hope is for that Shinji realism of children in this scenario, or self-inserts. Fang is reminiscent of those Lancer types, and Saz is...
We aren't soldiers. We don't have your kind of stamina.
You got enough to complain.
Oh, that's... Forget it!
Together, they are the worst people to be heroes, and it eventually works really well. All of them are depressed. Basically, they're all dealing with loss one way or another. Vanilla is in denial with a peppy attitude. Hope is a kid who just watched his mom die and blames Snow, who wants to rescue his girlfriend, Sarah! Lightning wants to rescue Sarah, but also blames Snow and also a bit more open about it. Saz lost his son, who gets kidnapped before dying and also has a fake suicide scene. What the fuck?
Enough is enough.
Peak soap opera shit, and I'm fucking here for it. Did you know that this scene is why the Chocobo baby was added to Saz's hair? They needed it to preemptively lighten the mood before they fucking Greg Louganis Olympic dive into the darkest shit possible. We're not even scratching the surface. I mean, these character dynamics are incredible. Lightning helps Hope grow as a person using her flawed, calculated, angry nature to help Hope act on his feelings. And then Hope is immediately paired up with Snow, and shit goes crazy. Sure, he's whiny and melodramatic, and these scenes are just... Yes! It takes them a while to become the heroes we, the players, expect from them. By the time they come back from their respective inner journeys, a group of strong, well-defined heroes with clear goals and flaws that they're finally willing to accept, you feel like you know them. And you're willing to accept them too. No, but the real negatives can be framed by the following. Did you know Saz is a pilot? What's Hope's favorite media? He's a kid, so he must watch TV or movies or read. What did Vanille and Fang do on Grand Pulse for fun? When Snow isn't talking about himself being a hero and being a frat boy and sucking himself off to the sound of Troy Baker's NFT-loving voice, what sports does he watch? What is everyone's workout routine? Look at that shit. You can eat a penis off those abs. These may seem unimportant, but in the same vein as having no towns or mini-games to take a break from the hallway slog and personify these characters, the characters don't do much besides advance the plot. In a character-focused story, that kind of sucks. You know what also sucks? Your sister gets cancer and goes into a coma. But the police also want her dead because it's contagious and the cancer makes you do crimes. Yeah, that's the concept. Speaking of plot, the story is famously hard to understand, so I'm going to do this as quickly as possible. I'm gonna fucking kill myself! Gods are in this world, and sometimes they force people to be their followers with a very specific mission. If they fail, they turn into monsters. And if they succeed, they're immortally in crystal. This crystal contains their souls. But one of these gods, Bartandalus, wants to meet God, the maker whose name is Lindsay. No, I'm not kidding. And she's in heaven. He doesn't have a soul, so he can't meet her. The afterlife is real, by the way. So he decides to kill as many people as possible at one time, in hopes that will open up heaven. Bart can't directly hurt people. He's a god and doesn't want to piss off Lindsay. So instead, he makes his people go to an another planet like 10 feet away with their own gods. Their society becomes super advanced and shit, and there are Brazilians of people, and from this point, Bart pulls out a fucking Glock and starts doing terrorist attacks, so both planets will have wars until Ragnarok, the apocalypse, happens, activated by 2 lesbians in a trench coat. So he waits until all the people exist to get destroyed by the gays and becomes president and the Pope. He then launches a smear campaign on all the sea so the main characters have nowhere to run to and become more powerful by destroying his entire military complex. God bless America, my tax dollars are put to good use. The main characters are screwed and must destroy the world or else, and they cry and shit and piss and cum about it until the final battle. And Bartanilus fuses with a child so they can't kill him without destroying the world, and Bart is like, yes, I win! But Lindsay is God, and she just decides, no, I don't want you to do that. And gives gays full control of their power, so they form the double lesbian, but they can control their power and they kill the president so hard that he dies. And he dies. And they form the logo. You win!
If you didn't get all that, you could probably compare it to a certain movie in order to understand the plot better.
Okay, what is the plot of Minority Report?
Okay, so there are these cognitive beings that are basically people that went through super traumatic experiences as children, and they see the future. Basically, they tell these futures to the police team that tries to prevent it ahead of time. But they find out later that some of these visions are basically orchestrated by somebody that is trying to enact his own will on how he wants to make the world exist, and he's funneling everybody into this quote-unquote perfect world. And the main character runs away from this once he realizes that, and the whole, the police team is trying to murder him for it because he's not enacting his vision.
Are the visions vague?
Yes, and they basically have to figure out as quickly as possible how it's going to happen and get there before it actually happens.
It's Minority Report. In movies, there's something called an opening shot. It establishes the theme of a movie, its characters, and where it plans to end the film. The focus here is clearly on animation, music, and cinematography. The first music that plays in the game, both in and out of battle, are boss battle themes. They're making you fight a boss as the tutorial. Here's an anagram for you. Confuse the players with terms you don't explain in your story. Underplay the battling part of the video game, what attracted everyone to the series in the first place. And narrow the exploration. You're literally changing everything about the series. And as such, the fans feel betrayed and tricked.
So what exactly did the fans say about the situation? Let's check the anagram.
So what's happened since? Well, exactly 2 years later in 2011, Final Fantasy XIII 2 happened. With an increase in hardware and, as mentioned before, an entire game's worth of unused assets as well as used assets, they were able to solve basically all the game's problems. They made worlds filled with NPCs. It looked amazing, and... So yeah, more music I like, huge sales, and at least this sequel did better than 10's. What can I do for you? In 2013, Lightning Returns happened. It sucked. Everyone agrees it sucked. Noah's Ark, but convoluted. That's the plot. They ripped off Majora's Mask, but instead of each play being roughly an hour, they waste 13 hours of your life instead, because you can't Groundhog Day it necessarily perfect the first time. But they also lock necessary upgrades behind a game over screen. Jarringly, they chose to give you no guidance and make it all a giant open area to explore, all with grayscale color. And it's Punch-Out with emphasis on parries. The opposite of what the past entries were. If you liked 13, you were down for the hallways. And if you hated 13, you were gone by this point. Who was this game for? 90 dresses! Facebook! And that's it. Louis Vuitton did a thing with 13 where they did a fake interview with Lightning, aka Eclair Farron, or Claire in English. Eclair Farron. That's not a real name! My clothes were nothing more than armor to stay alive. Dressing up was a concept I've never had. Perhaps that makes me an unseemly choice as an ambassador. Though his style was new to me, the moment I laid eyes on his collection, it was as if I was hit by a bolt of lightning. I knew that with this, people could change. I could change. At least this is nicer than what Duke told me in an interview last week.
You're a pussy.
You might notice 13's reputation taints its own content, maybe even from your own perspective. While it also influenced the past decade of Final Fantasy content, the Crystal Engine, the software used to make the game, was also meant to house what would become of Final Fantasy 15, Final Fantasy 14, Final Fantasy Type 0, and was originally intended to host Dragon Quest X. This was doomed from the start, and between 14 and All the Bravest, it became clear Final Fantasy had no direction for the new decade. Hence A Realm Reborn and 15 both being announced in 2013. But the big interesting thing to pull from all this is this. This is the cast from 13. Now look at the cast for Final Fantasy VII's remake. Could see they're all still employed, but wow, that's the same team! And it shows, especially in the leveling system. The battles are a mix between Kingdom Hearts and 13, allowing you to physically run around the battle area and reintroducing the stagger mechanic. Both 15 and 7 Remake maintain a no random encounters approach. 13 also introduced anime sounds. But what really makes the presentation is the music. Something in 13.2 is that when an enemy shows up in a random encounter, the playing track will not be a standard battle theme, but a remix of that same theme. And that same theme transitions at the exact time code. 7 Remake takes this step further by transitioning the song from loop to cutscene seamlessly, as well as the graphics, most apparent in the Sephiroth fight, and in the Genova fight where it's 9 minutes long. I bet by now you're hoping I'll shut up about the music. Did you see the opening of the 2021 Japan Olympics? Here's the audio of it, and I can't show it because of copyright, but the song they're using to kick it off sound familiar? Do a certain Final Fantasy 13 final boss theme? The first Final Fantasy was a staple for how to format an RPG. 4 and 6 introduced how to tell a story in RPGs, 7 brought Final Fantasy to a new scope, and 10 was a masterpiece not only in storytelling, but of facial animations, voice acting, and mechanics. 13 added a new layer of presentation to the games, raising them from games to experiences, introducing a movie-like quality to cutscenes and music that's like Olympics. The gaming industry has been heading towards using most of its efforts to improve graphics for a while now, and at the most crucial time, Square chose not to meet these parameters, but to exceed them. There might be some changes to the formula that you don't like. The concentration on characters rather than story, the new music that isn't the same as it used to be, mobile games, the thing with Tifa in Italy. But overall, the series has an incredible presentation. Without 13, you wouldn't have this. You wouldn't have any of this. And this is amazing. And I know how you probably feel, but the writing has some universally good shit. The premise on its own is a spin on the chosen hero premise. Chosen ones must save the world, yada yada, world save. The first spin, to my knowledge, was with 7 making Sephiroth the chosen one, and the hero, Cloud, secretly a nobody. 13 turns this trope on its head in a different direction by making being chosen a horrible fate and making those chosen people perhaps not meant to be heroes. And there's a concentration on these characters and their inner journey, and I can appreciate that. And you know what else? Unlike every other Final Fantasy game, I can relate to it too. Nobody is where they thought they'd be in life, because that's how life works. So the idea that a bunch of flawed, normal people, just like you and me, can forgive themselves, change, and then kick their uncaring god right in his cooter, you know what? I can get behind that. The gameplay sucks. The writing sucks. Story doesn't make sense. But the music was good, and it looked good. So wasn't it good? What I'm trying to say is, a game can be bad in every single way. Just straight up baby diaper garbage. But you put enough imagination and effort into making it look good, and making the main gameplay mechanic feel good, it gets the job done. And that might be upsetting to people who want to see games be perfect all the time. That doesn't exist. Sometimes you find out your favorite game was just your wet dream from middle school. That's me, I am that guy. And that's okay. You outgrow it. But it still has something to offer. Even if it's a piece of shit. Man, that's a good-looking piece of shit. So what do I think about Final Fantasy 13? Is it my favorite game? No. No, not even close, not even in the top 10. I think it's one of my favorite movies. That's how I like to think of it. My favorite 8-hour-long movie, including all cutscenes. If people watch Lord of the Rings director's cut for a full day, then I am allowed to have this and love it as my favorite movie and not as a game. No, don't roll the credits yet, I am not done! Thanks for watching. I put a lot of time and effort into this, and I'd appreciate a like, subscribe, ring the bell icon, like, comment, like, Taco Bell icon. You gotta like the comment and like the bell. The bell icon! It's the bell icon! Brought to you by Raid Shadow.